No tennis player stays on top forever. But every now and then, someone rises in a way that makes the entire sport feel like it's shifting beneath your feet. In the early 2020s, when the big three were fading and a new generation was supposed to take over, nobody expected the most intimidating presence to come from a quiet, red-haired kid from the Italian mountains. Jannik Sinner didn't arrive with marketing hype or explosive theatrics. He arrived with silence, discipline, and a game that grew heavier every single season. While the tour was busy debating whether Alcaraz, Medvedev, or Zverev would define the next decade, Sinner was quietly building something more dangerous than hype: consistency. Opponents didn't fear him at first, but they soon would, because there's nothing more unsettling in tennis than a player who never panics, never slows down, and never gives you away in. The early years of Sinner's rise felt subtle but undeniable. He wasn't the teenager who stunned the world with wild highlight reels. He was the teenager who kept showing up in places you didn't expect him to be. Deep runs in big tournaments came earlier than projected, and his ball striking already looked like it belonged to a veteran. It wasn't just that he hit hard, many players do that. It was the purity of contact, the repeatability, the way the ball exploded off his strings with the same heaviness again and again. Coaches, analysts, and former pros all said the same thing: if he grows into that body and sharpens those weapons, this guy is going to be a nightmare. And that's exactly what happened. As 2022 approached, Sinner began carving out a place in the top tier, not with massive peaks, but with steady, relentless improvement. He added a bit more pace to the forehand, stabilized the backhand, refined the serve, and strengthened the legs that powered his explosive baseline game. He didn't skip steps. He built layer upon layer until his weaknesses shrank and his strengths became vicious. By the time he was consistently reaching the late rounds of Masters events and slams, the locker room started noticing the difference. You could sense it in the way players spoke about him, carefully, respectfully, with the tone reserved for someone who was no longer an up-and-comer but a genuine problem. Sinner's game at full power is a study in suffocating baseline pressure. His forehand, flatter than most modern players, pierces through the court and takes time away even from elite defenders. His backhand, one of the cleanest two-handers of his generation, redirects pace like a laser, especially down the line, where the ball skids through the surface before opponents can react. He doesn't rely on tricky spins or unpredictable chaos. Instead, he plays a brand of aggressive, linear tennis that collapses opponents backward. Every rally feels like a weight pushing you deeper into the court until you have no room left to breathe. And once you've backed up enough, he steps inside the baseline and steals the match right out of your hands. What sets Sinner apart is the repeatability of his aggression. Most players can fire heavy balls for a few games, maybe a set, before the rhythm fades, the timing slips, and the errors start rolling in. With Sinner, the ball striking doesn't fade. It maintains, and sometimes it even grows stronger as the match gets longer. Opponents often start matches thinking they can trade with him from the back, only to realize by the second set that they're being physically and mentally drained point by point. His depth never relents, his pace never lets up, his shot tolerance is higher than it looks. And worst of all, he never looks like he's working as hard as you are. Physically, Sinner is built in a deceptively efficient way. He doesn't have the bulk of Nadal, the sculpted explosiveness of Rune, or the sprinter's frame of Shelton, but he has something far more dangerous: a body engineered for endurance without visual effort. His footwork is subtle but lethal, covering the court with no wasted motion, always arriving on balance, always hitting from a stable base. He doesn't slide dramatically unless he needs to, and he never looks like he's sprinting at full speed, which makes the consistency of his positioning even more impressive. The longer the match goes, the more it feels like Sinner is the one dictating the physical terms. He doesn't fade in hour 3, you do. Because his game is built around both timing and pressure, opponents often find themselves burning energy just to survive rally after rally. It starts slow, like a mild discomfort, but the weight of Sinner's ball accumulates. The legs get heavier, the lungs start burning, and the mind begins to press. You swing harder to counter his pace, you take greater risks to shorten the points. And that's when the match slips away. Not because he hits winners, but because he forces you to take shots you can't sustain. He turns your aggression against you. He makes you feel like your best tennis is never quite good enough. That psychological exhaustion is a signature trait of his prime. The serve was once Sinner's weakest link, and players circled it as the place to attack. But between 2022 and 2024, he completely rebuilt it. His team refined the mechanics, rerouted the toss, stabilized the landing, and added strength to his upper body. Suddenly, the serve was not just a liability solved, it became a weapon. He started hitting more aces, earning more free points, and backing up his holds with the confidence of a heavyweight. Breaking Sinner now requires extraordinary risk-taking, and most players aren't capable of maintaining that for the duration of a match. As the serve strengthened, the rest of his game became even harder to penetrate. What quietly scares players most is how little emotion Sinner shows, even when he's on the edge. Tennis is a psychological sport where body language matters. You can sense when an opponent is tightening up, when they're frustrated, when they're searching. With Sinner, there's none of that. His expression rarely changes. His demeanor looks identical whether he's down break point or serving for the match. This emotional invisibility means opponents get no read on him. No clue when he's vulnerable, no sense of cracks in the armor, no momentum shifts they can feed off. He plays at the same emotional temperature from first point to last. That calmness is not a lack of passion, it's control. Even as a teenager, Sinner had the ability to stay level-headed in chaotic moments. Matches where momentum shifted violently rarely shook him. Losses didn't derail him. Wins didn't send him into ego-driven lapses. He kept showing up, improving, and sharpening the fundamentals that now define his intimidation factor. When he became one of the best closers in the sport, it wasn't surprising. He had spent years training his mind to operate without panic, without noise, and without the emotional turbulence that derails so many young stars. The tour began to feel this shift most clearly in late 2023, when Sinner transformed from dangerous opponent into player you don't want anywhere near your section of the draw. His ball striking felt heavier, his movement felt sharper, his serve became a reliable weapon. His margin improved while his aggression stayed intact. He became the rare combination of power, steadiness, and cold rationality. Facing him felt less like facing a tennis player, and more like facing a machine designed to win baseline exchanges until the match breaks in his favor. By the time 2024 arrived, Sinner wasn't just a contender, he was a force of nature. His Australian Open run displayed everything that made him intimidating: tactical awareness, mental stability, physical endurance, and a level of shot-making that overwhelmed some of the best players in the world. He beat opponents not by surprising them once, but by sustaining a level of tennis that none of them could match for long enough. Every round felt like confirmation that his rise wasn't hype or timing. It was the natural result of a game built for domination. Opponents often talk about Sinner with a kind of quiet respect that borders on unease, and nowhere is that clearer than in the way they describe his mentality. Many great players have shots and speed, but very few combine those weapons with the emotional stillness required to execute them under pressure. Sinner's stillness is not passive, it's active. He absorbs the tension of big points without letting it disturb his patterns. He stays committed to his game even when the crowd is loud, even when the opponent is surging, even when the score looks bleak. The steadiness is so profound that it drains the belief from whoever is on the other side of the net. You don't just need to play your best tennis to beat him. You need to sustain it while he plays like he's unaware of the scoreboard. What makes this mentality even more intimidating is how he reacts to adversity. Some players crumble when they're broken early, or when they lose a tight set, or when a top player starts swinging freely. Sinner simply resets. It's as if his brain categorizes mistakes not as emotional events, but as data points to be corrected. There's no shouting, no racket smashing, no visible anger, just a small breath, a brief moment of focus, and then the same terrifying heavy-hitting resumes. When a player refuses to show panic, it becomes difficult to attack their confidence. That mental stability creates an atmosphere where opponents wait for a crack that never appears, and by the time they realize it, the match has slipped beyond reach. His rivalry with Carlos Alcaraz is a perfect example of that psychological dynamic. Alcaraz is explosive, charismatic, and unpredictable, a player who thrives on chaos and momentum. Sinner, by contrast, thrives on order and pressure. When the two meet, the contrast is electric, the emotional electricity of Alcaraz against the cold precision of Sinner. Their matches often swing violently, but Sinner's ability to quiet the chaos makes him uniquely equipped to take the fire out of Alcaraz's game. Even when down, Even when Alcaraz is producing highlight reel shots, Sinner stays faithful to his patterns. That steadiness has earned him some of the most impressive wins of their rivalry and has given him an aura as the one opponent who can consistently disrupt Alcaraz's rhythm. His meetings with Daniil Medvedev also show why players fear him. Medvedev's return position is famously deep, designed to absorb pace and elongate rallies. But Sinner's flatter, skidding strokes penetrate that deep court position and push Medvedev even farther back than he's comfortable with. What should be Medvedev's greatest advantage quickly becomes a liability. Sinner's pace suffocates his defense, and rallies that Medvedev uses to frustrate most players simply don't work on him. When Sinner broke through against Medvedev repeatedly near the end of 2023, it wasn't because he changed everything. It was because his incremental improvements finally tipped the balance. Those matches marked the moment when the tour realized Sinner was now strong enough, fast enough, and mentally sharp enough to solve elite defenders. The rivalry with Novak Djokovic is perhaps the clearest symbol of his evolution. Djokovic had spent over a decade as the ultimate test in men's tennis, the final boss no one could defeat unless they played at an extraordinary level. Early in their encounters, Sinner came close but fell short, as most young players do. But with every meeting, he gained more understanding, not just of Djokovic's patterns, but of what it takes mentally to beat someone who refuses to lose. When Sinner eventually defeated him on big stages, the victories carried more than ranking significance. They carried psychological meaning for the entire locker room. When you beat Djokovic, especially in tight moments, especially in a slam setting, it signals that you possess a level of mental clarity that belongs to the sport's highest echelon. Sinner proved he wasn't just rising, he had arrived. What makes Sinner's intimidation factor even stronger is the way he refined his game without abandoning its foundation. He didn't try to become a flashy shot maker or mimic other players' styles. Instead, he deepened the traits he already had: the early ball taking, the clean lines, the penetrating depth, the relentless pace. His team focused on physical strength, serve improvement, tactical clarity, and emotional control. They didn't want him to become a showman. They wanted him to become the best version of the player he already was. This type of identity-focused development is rare, and it's one of the reasons his transformation feels so stable. Nothing about his rise feels temporary. Everything feels built to last. As his game evolved, his confidence followed. Not outward confidence, the jumping, the chest beating, the dramatic celebrations, but the kind of inner confidence that shows up in decision-making. You can see it in the way he takes balls on the rise, even in tense moments. You can see it in the way he stands inside the baseline on returns against big servers, trusting his reactions and timing. You can see it in the way he chooses the aggressive cross-court angle instead of rolling the ball into the middle of the court. His confidence manifests in execution, not expression. That's what makes it terrifying. It's a quiet, assured belief that doesn't rely on theatrics to be felt. When Sinner steps onto the court now, there's a sense that he's bringing a complete package: the physical strength to endure long rallies, the technical consistency to win baseline wars, the mental calmness to survive pressure, and the tactical awareness to adjust when needed. Many players excel in 2 or 3 of these areas. Sinner excels in all of them. His completeness is suffocating. You cannot simply hit him. Off the court, you cannot outlast him, you cannot outsteady him, and you certainly cannot rely on emotional swings to throw him off his game. He is built to withstand all the usual forms of pressure that crack most players. As the seasons progress, you can feel a shift happening in how players react to him. Some speak about his ball striking in tones usually reserved for legends. Others mention the difficulty of maintaining intensity when faced with someone who doesn't react to your best shots. There's admiration, but also resignation. Players know that if Sinner is in your section of the draw, your path is brutal. If he's on your half, your tournament gets harder. If he's across the net, your margin disappears. It's not that he's unbeatable, it's that beating him requires a level of perfection most players can't sustain for more than a handful of games. The defining trait of his prime might be that he takes the match away from you without ever needing to do anything flashy. He doesn't rely on miracle shots or desperate winners. He wins by being himself at the highest possible level, by repeating his patterns until the resistance breaks. There's an elegance to it, even if it's not Federer's kind of elegance. It's the elegance of clarity, simplicity, and precision. The elegance of a game that knows exactly what it wants to do and executes it again and again without emotional interference. If you had to describe Jannik Sinner in one word during his prime years, it might be inevitable. His rise wasn't driven by marketing or chaos. It was driven by daily improvement, mental discipline, and a style of tennis that strips opponents of space, time, and belief. He might not retire with the most trophies or the most records, but he brings a type of intimidation that belongs to the rarest players in history, the intimidation of emotional silence. Against him, matches feel like tests where you slowly realize you're running out of solutions. He represents a new era not through noise, but through quiet domination. And as the next decade unfolds, one truth has already settled into the sport. Jannik Sinner doesn't need to fear anyone, because he knows exactly what he must do to beat them. And deep down, they know it too.